Well, hey, we have landed at the very end of the semester. One more week to go. Still working on these projects. I'm going to be very brief, as I would in class. If we were together, I would have a very quick lecture here and a demonstration about mixing, and then you would have the rest of the time to work as I travel around and see what you have been producing. So the of course, virtual translation of that is you sending me your work for me to comment on. But yeah, here we are, and we're at the end where we will talk about the final mix, the very last step in the process of post-production sound, and really often the last step for films to go through in general. Really, the final mix happens after everything with the picture has been completed. So that the director, the producer, everyone involved that wants to can sit in the final mixing session, generally done in a mixed theater like what we have at CalArts, and watch the film in its full finished capacity visually as the sound is being finished, so you can hear what it's sounding like as well. So the lab, I will talk more about technicals. We've gone over a few things already, of course, in Premiere. Way back in week 3, if you remember, we did talk about some mixing stuff there. I've mentioned mixing stuff here and there. But overall, I'd say remember the key, I think, technical point to remember is you want to hit around that -10 decibel mark in your master fader so that you know that your levels are averaging around the industry standard, especially dialogue. Now, I know lots of you aren't working with dialogue on these projects, nor will you work with dialogue on your films this year, but hopefully you will in the future. But yeah, you can use that mark as a guide for really all the other predominant things that are going on. But I won't deliberate on that too much. I'll talk about more of the technicals in that last Pro Tools lab. With this, I just wanted to give some pointers on what you might want to think about with your own films in the spring when you have the opportunity to potentially get your films mixed. And that's what would happen in the industry as well. In the industry, we would have the film go through this process with these mixers, who you should credit again as re-recording mixers, by the way, not sound mixers. So a sound mixer is someone on an actual physical set recording sound, and I mentioned that a long time ago, I think the very first week even. But yeah, it's very important to credit them as such, because if you credit them as a sound mixer, especially like say on IMDb, they'll look like they recorded sound for you on a production shoot, which actually happened to me a few years back. I hadn't been paying attention at all to my IMDb creds, and went back in after a while and noticed that half of them listed me as a sound mixer, and I'm like, this makes me look like a production sound person. I'm a re-recording mixer. I need to correct all of this. So yeah, it's good to credit people accordingly. So in the industry, you might even have up to 3 re-recording mixers all working in tandem together, one actually focusing on the dialogue, one focusing on the sound effects, and one focusing on the music. The sound effects person would also be dealing with backgrounds. That's wild to me. I've always been a lone re-recording mixer handling everything at once, and it's really impressive for me to think about 3 people kind of bouncing off of each other and together mixing these 3 elements of film all at the same time. So a lot of behind the scenes videos, you'll see like 3 people sitting at this very large mixing board in a theater, and that's what they're doing. But you can have that similar experience at CalArts. We have a mixed theater, which is very unusual for a school. I'm going to miss having access to that place. I mean, I have a very small mix facility at home. These 2 speakers you've been seeing this whole time are my 2 surround speakers. My computer is what is recording me, and I have 3 speakers in front of me here. That's essentially what consists of a surround mix: a center speaker, a left speaker, a right speaker, these two being the right surround and left surround. So if you could see that I have 3 more of these types of speakers in front of me here. And then there's also a subwoofer on the floor that I have that we called an LFE, a low frequency effects speaker. And that's where you get the 0.1 and the 5.1. So they call it a 0.1 because it's not utilized all the time. All the rest of the speakers have lots of things coming out of them generally. But the LFE is really just for low frequency effects, really, low end big effects like earthquakes, explosions, things like that. I tend to put a lot of the music through it too, in fact, because it gives the music a bit of a bass boost. But that's still not the whole entire time. It's just whenever the music is playing. But the center channel, of course, is very heavy. That's going to have any of your mono material that's supposed to be coming from the screen, obviously. Your dialogue, your Foley, your on-screen cut sound effects. The left and right speakers will take care of anything that's in stereo. So really, you can think of anything that's in your timeline that's going to be in mono is going to be coming from the center speaker, or if you've panned it around, it'll come from whichever speaker or speakers it's closest to. And then your stereo material will come from left and right, your backgrounds, your music. And similarly, that's what's going to be coming from your surround speakers as well, are your music and your backgrounds. Maybe just a little bit quieter, a little bit spacier, giving your audience like the feeling that the music and the backgrounds are all around them. If you've been in a theater as of late, which probably most of you haven't, but like last time you're in the theater or the multiple times you've been in the theater, maybe you even recognize that's what's coming through those speakers on the sides. And you might think, oh, what about all those speakers on the sides? Well, I think I mentioned this before, but every single speaker on the right, every single speaker on the left has the same stuff coming out of it. And there's just so many of them that they're there so that everyone in the theater gets the same experience. My little room here, all I need is one speaker for each and I'm good. I don't need to be surrounded by a bunch of speakers in this small room. So great, that's some preliminary sort of stuff to think about, say if you want to move your film into surround. You personally don't have to. You sit down with a faculty member like myself to get your film mixed. Any film that gets into the producer's show will be mixed, or that's the idea, at least under normal circumstances. Again, who knows what's going to happen this year. We did not get a producer's show this past year, the first time really, I think, in either ever or in a long time. And so, yeah, it's the year that I bow out of CalArts, I didn't get to mix the producer show as I have done the dozen years beforehand, sadly. And who knows what's going to happen this year as well. I mean, I'm kind of too far away from CalArts now down in Long Beach to realistically mix the whole entire producer show in a week, especially with my duties here down at Cal State Long Beach. So quite likely, even if there is a producer show this year, I won't be the one to mix it. But you are in good hands nevertheless. The other instructors, the other technicians that we have on campus that know how to mix films, like Aidan Reynolds, like Craig Smith, they will be able to mix just as good as I do. If not Craig, maybe even more so, because he's been doing it for a lot of years as well. But yeah, I always also do a call out to mix films prior to the open show, so that if anybody wants to get a mix, they can with me before submitting to the open show. And then if you get into the producer show, then you already got a mix, which is great. Helps me out when that happens. And that's become real popular in more recent years. When I first started doing that, maybe I'd mix like 5 to 10 films before the open show, but in the last few years, geez, I've mixed like 20 some odd films prior to the open show, because people are cluing into it being a nice service, and it is a good service. So it will help level your film out correctly to the correct industry standard. So if you haven't gotten quite to this proper level, we have a lot more bells and whistles in the mix theater to make sure that you're at the proper level. So we got other awesome plugins to ensure that that's happening. Again, we kick everything into surround. We make sure that everything is nice and cleaned up. You have a professional set of ears to listen to your stuff to make sure that it's as presentable as possible. So there's all these benefits, of course, to getting a mix. And then you can have a professional mix to post up and show people, to potentially get into festivals and have a surround mix to play back and surround at a festival, which is really neat, and have a mix that would, stand up against anything produced in the industry for sure. But it remains to be seen what's going to happen this year, if any mixes will happen at all. I think they're trying to figure out how to do remote mixes. I think some of those actually happened this semester, so it might happen again. Who knows? Maybe I'll do some remote mixing. That remains to be seen. We'll see what happens as things move forward. But yeah, you'll get a heads up either way. There will be emails sent out notifying you of what's going on. But after this year, I'm sure the next school year, normal circumstances, once you're all third years, will come back into place. And by the spring of your junior year, you will have the normal mandate of when you get into the producer show, if you do, to get your film mixed automatically. And if you want to get it mixed beforehand, hopefully whoever is doing sound for you all in the character animation program will continue to provide that service. And it is a free service too. Every other program, actually, the other 3 programs require their students to pay for the mix, which is still pretty inexpensive. I believe it's similar to the studio. It's something like $12 or $20 an hour or something like that. And mixes generally for animated films don't go more than 3 hours tops, and that's for the longer, like 6-7 minute ones, I'd say. But all of you, at least as of now, and that's been the case for a dozen years, get them for free, which is pretty neat. So I don't know, maybe budgetary things will change because of what's going on, but that's what Maya has provided to you all, which is really sweet. Even the other folks in the other programs that get into their showcases, they have to pay for their mixes. They're like, congrats, you're in showcase, you get a mix, now give us some money. But with all of you, that's not the case. You're like, you get a mix, and you just get it. But it's a cool facility. Hopefully you can take a look in it at some point. The room is A111, which is right around the corner from A112, our recording studio. It's all in the same place around Sound Central, I would call it. And I'll probably repeat this again maybe over Zoom, but take advantage of these facilities. These sound facilities, once you're back on campus, are here for you. You have not only that small amount of gear you can check out from the cage, but you have the recording studio where you should be getting your dialogue recording done, of course. You should be getting your Foley recording done, as discussed last week. Very cheap, super professional, as professional as any studio out there. They've got a real professional Foley mic, all those things that you can play with in there. It's soundproofed, recorded into Pro Tools, obviously. The Mix Theater is an actual theater. It looks like the Bijou, actually. It's right below the Bijou, and basically a carbon footprint that looks exactly like the Bijou, except for there's a big mixing console in the middle of it where you sit and have your film mixed in surround. And then right across the hall from that in E104 is the sound room, basically. That's where you can go for sound help, any sonic assistance, any troubleshooting with software, like with SoundMiner, to get the sound effects from our library, with Pro Tools, with the sound gear that you check out. They can help you out with a lot of stuff. And that's where you also go to schedule a recording session as well. And you could also go there to see if you can schedule a mix. Honestly, I would say in the future, if there's not someone like myself who provided mixes prior to the open show, you could just do your own due diligence, go to that room and be like, yo, I want to schedule a mix. Can I get a mix? You'll probably have to pay for it, or maybe you can just finagle and ask Maya, hey, I scheduled a mix, can the department pay for it, like Ben said they did in the past? But either way, that's what they're there for. They're there for all of your sound needs. And they're all in the same place, they're all right down the hall from where you have a lot of your classes, where I would be teaching class A104 or A109, excuse me, and that's where we would be if we were in person. Would be that room, right down the hall from all the sound facilities. So great. That's all I got. That's some food for thought as things move forward. I know a lot of this is vague. Who knows what's going to happen? That is what it is, as I always say. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you've enjoyed all these lectures. Be sure to, again, of course, this is the last thing to watch. There's the lab on mixing you should watch this week as well. But yeah, that's that. We'll have one more Zoom meeting to touch base and talk. But yeah, please everyone, work on those projects, do as best as you can, mix them to the best of your ability based on what I talk about in the lab. And yeah, I'm excited to see what you come up with as we wrap up the semester.